you know, the tide goes way above the dam in Augusta. But keep in mind that we've lost a lot of the coastline. We do have coastal cemeteries, but I think we've lost most of them.
So what do you think took them to Passadumkeag? There's some serious falls between there and...
I think they're fishing. I think they're going after salmon runs, alewives, shad. I have a feeling that most of the cemeteries are places you would think is a good place to set a net or to spear a fish. They're pretty predictable in their locations. Yeah.
Were plummets used for fishnets throwing them out?
I think the small ones were. He asked, are the plummets used for fishnets? And there are many parts of the world where people still fish traditionally. They might have a circular net with weights around the outside, and they'll cast it, and it'll spin out over the water and come down on the fish. But also, if you're going to string a net across a stream that has a current, you want the bottom margin of the net to be weighted. So I think they could have been used in either of those ways. The big plummets are probably too clunky to use that way. And I think we had big bone fish hooks also from the turnip, from the site that I dug. Big, you know, perfect for a big cod, made up bone. And I think they were used with those plummets for sinkers.
The Susquehanna people,
yeah.
Do you have any reason for why they were there a short period of time and then left?
I actually have an idea. The people who replaced the red paint people, that we call the Susquehanna tradition, you know, why did they not stay once they got here? And I think the answer is that they came from the south and where they harvested nuts. Now, natural foods grade in energy value. Protein and animal fat are highest in nutritional density. And then most plants are much less dense in nutritionally less dense. In between are seeds and oily nuts. And in the southern latitudes, Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia, the marine resources aren't rich. But the nuts are full of mast. They're mast forests with a lot of nuts and acorns. And I think that's what that culture was adapted to. And as they came up into this region, they didn't seem to pay much attention to marine resources. They paid less attention to marine resources than anyone before them or after them. And so I think that they were relying on a traditional lifestyle, which is hunting acorns. And as you come north, the variety of mast species diminishes. And so by the time you get here, you have what? A few hickories, a lot of acorns, but they're bitter acorns, the red ones are, and a few other minor nut species, whereas down in the south, you know, you got walnuts, pecans, on and on and on, all these nut-bearing trees. Yeah, so I think that, I'm not sure how prominent chestnut was up here. I'd have to check the pollen record. But my sense is they gave it a try, it didn't work, and so they didn't disappear. Down in Massachusetts, this culture went on for almost a millennium. You can see them perking along, slowly changing their lifestyle, but living that traditional lifestyle in southern New England. But in Maine, it's as if they tried it, didn't like it, and left.
How far north is the Susquehanna tradition reach?
Just barely to the St. Lawrence. There's one little burial in Lévis, across from Quebec City.
Yes, I'm thinking east.
I'm trying to think. Mud Lake Stream. This man's from New Brunswick, so we can talk local terms. Yeah, yeah. That seems to be about the eastern limit. Yeah.
You had mentioned the eyed needle, and that the Eskimos may have used these for did use these for their clothing because they needed that tighter stitch. But the red paint people were trading with the North. Why isn't that connection?
Well, you know, I never thought of that. And you might be able to analyze these needles to see if they're made of some northern...
No, me, I'm slow.
Yeah. No. But the thing is, if you did isotopic analysis on the bone, you might be able to determine that they do, in fact, come from the north. And that would be worth doing. Yeah. There's more work to be done. Yeah.
The statement, the Eskimos and the Inuits are very recent great tribes. They've only been here a few thousand years, so that culture wouldn't have existed. Did they do anything with this? You said you found a lot of these, whatever you call them, the sword bones from the swordfish.
The rostrum.
Did they use them?
Well, remember the four shafts that I talked about?
Yeah.
Those are made of swordfish sword, rostrum. And what else? Oh, those hexagonal lance tips. They were all busted up. I said they might have been the prototypes for the slate lance tips. Those are made of swordfish sword. And several other tools are made of swordfish sword as well. Yeah.
Any evidence that they might have been hunting any other large whales or anything like that?
We have no evidence of whales. We have, every once in a while, you'll find a whale bone, but you suspect it probably came from a beached carcass, right? The shark teeth suggest that they possibly took must have taken sharks, because sharks don't wash up on shore, they sink, right? And would they have not tried for a tuna if one went by? I suspect they would. But the tuna don't bask on the surface the way swordfish do. If one whipped by, you might throw your harpoon, but
Seals.
No, they didn't. The seals are very uncommon, and there are two possible reasons for that. And I have a good friend, Bob Stenick. Some of you may know him, and we argue about this all the time. I think could have been a cultural preference. Wouldn't you rather eat swordfish than seal meat? How many people have eaten seal meat? It's actually not that bad. But you'd probably prefer swordfish, I suspect. So I think it might be partially cultural preference, but Bob Stenick thinks there weren't many seals because they couldn't outcompete cod. They ate the same thing. Cod don't have to stop to take a breath, and the seals we have here don't take whole fish. Pacific seals will bite a fish. Our seals only swallow whole fish. And so Bob thinks that the cod were the dominant predator, and seals played a very minor secondary role. And also, I don't find lobster shell in my sites. I maintain it's because the lobster shell doesn't preserve. Bob maintains it's because the cod are eating all the baby lobsters. So there are these possible different explanations. But it would be a very interesting paper to write on what we don't find in the middens. Which species are absent? We do not find any crows or any gulls. You get down to the coast today, what's the first thing you see? Crows and gulls. We never find any. And I have no idea why.
The forest, you were saying that certainly in Maine you have the large pines for doing dugout canoes, large boats.
Yeah.
How about in Newfoundland and Labrador? Would they have been able to build dugouts of that sort?
I've had this discussion with my colleagues who work in the north, and on the Labrador coast, the answer is no. The spruce then would have been somewhat larger than they are today, and the tree line would have been farther north, but the spruce never would have attained the necessary size. But I talked to a Newfoundland archaeologist, and he sent me a picture of a humongous pine tree in Newfoundland. They're all cut down now, and they're not reestablishing themselves, but there would have been some really big pine trees in Newfoundland. Yeah.
Was the Turner Farm site, what period of time was it occupied?
Well, it was occupied both before the Red Pay people and right up to the historic period.
Was it an island then? Or
It's on North, yes, North End was an island then.
Okay.
It would have been closer to that string of islands that goes up toward Deer Isle, because all the islands would have been bigger with lower sea levels, but it still was an island.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes?
Speaking of additional research, in your book you mentioned you think the marsh might contain a canoe. Is there any plan to excavate that area?
Not at present. There's a lot of other things going on that property, and I think they feel that an archaeological crew would just be the straw that might break the camel's back. They're doing heavy organic farming there now. So that lies in the future.
Are there any other sites you think there might be a canoe?
Yeah, actually. There's a site in Gouldsboro called Taft's Point, and it is a site that had similar things at the bottom, but they were actually not quite as good as the Turner Farm site because they were actually in the mud below all the shell. So, the preservation isn't as good. It's sort of more like more of that site is washed away, so we have just but there's a marsh next to that site as well. And I just have not had time in my career to approach them, but there's another generation coming. No more questions? Well, it's a great turn. Oh, he has one.
Next generation. Do you find a lot of young people interested in
Not from the Northeast, because all the graduate departments in the Northeast decided they would train their students in contract archaeology, give up research, because the easy money was in contract archaeology. That doesn't train you to be a researcher. That it trains you to chase a bulldozer.
all the DOT?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm afraid we've lost our capacity to train at the graduate level archaeologists in the Northeast. So there are plenty of active young scholars in the upper Midwest, in the Canadian universities, and I hope our reluctance to hire Canadians will be diminished somewhat in the future, because that's where the talent is these days. Yeah, one final.
Yeah, so you're telling us that marine culture was what the red paint people were in all your estimation?
Yeah, let me just tell you a brief story. When I was in graduate school, hunter-gatherers were egalitarian. People went after big animals because that was economically efficient. People would rather get an elephant than chase 1,000 mice, right? Well, then people actually began to look at the lives of these big hunters, and they die at an incredibly high rate. These are your most valuable males in your society, so it doesn't make sense. And they began to watch the life trajectories of these big-time hunters, and it turns out they are signaling their prowess to their community. I can do this. I can deliver. You want elephant steak? I'm your boy. I'm going to go out and kill an elephant. And I might die trying, but I'm going to have fun when I get back home if I succeed. It's called costly signaling, and it's now a very current term in anthropology. And as so many things in human life are, when you put it on a marine environment, it just kicks it up exponentially. Because the ability of doing things with boats, I mean, on the land, you're a brave guy with a spear next to a not brave guy with a spear. There's not that much difference between the two of you. But if you can organize the social capital necessary to get a boat crew together on the coast, then you are truly a big man. It's very costly signaling. But the Ainu did it. There are two other people that hunted swordfish prehistorically in Japan, the Ainu. That's how they did it. The Chumash in California, that's how they did it. These boat captains, we know ethnographically, were really important people. And among the people on Kodiak Island, same thing there. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for coming. Great crowd. If you'd like, happy to sign a book if you'd like one.